In May 1945, Captain James Holloway piloted a B-29 Superfortress that took off from Tinian on a mission recorded as Okinawa night bombing. His aircraft never returned. The official report from the Pacific Command concluded that the plane was hit by Japanese anti-aircraft fire over the East China Sea, with the entire crew listed as missing and no wreckage recovered. The Holloway family received the standard notification, a folded flag, and assurance that he had died in combat. 60 years later, in 2005, a cave exploration team in Okinawa opened a sealed wartime bunker and discovered a massive rusted steel frame deep inside. Visible serial numbers confirmed it was Holloway's B-29. The field investigation report noted the fuselage was largely intact, showing no signs of fire or explosion, completely contradicting the military's shot-down conclusion. When the team accessed the bomb bay, they found a leather wallet containing James Holloway's identification papers, 2 personal photos, and a decayed set of documents stamped Special Cargo, East Indochina Route. The discovery was immediately reported to authorities, but information and images leaked before the site could be secured. Within days, U.S. forces arrived, seized all evidence, and sealed the area, but it was too late to stop the spread of initial details. What had been considered a closed case for 60 years suddenly became an open investigation with numerous discrepancies in the original report. The first person granted access to the new file was Andrew Holloway, James's grandson and a former Air Force officer. With his investigative experience and prior service, he was quickly assigned to review the evidence in Okinawa. The discovery of the wallet, photos, and classified documents thrust the Holloway name back into the spotlight of a historical investigation where old conclusions no longer held. Andrew realized that determining what truly happened to the B-29 and its crew in 1945 would involve unraveling a case far more complex than a mission shot down. Andrew Holloway arrived in Okinawa under close supervision by local police and an international team of experts. The underground cave where the B-29 was found had been cordoned off with metal barriers and caution tape. The narrow entrance still bore traces of the old sealed concrete, its surface marred by fresh drill marks. When floodlights were switched on, the massive aircraft's rusted, moss-covered fuselage came into view, its main structure remarkably intact. Japanese experts noted the condition of the frame. No signs of fire, no detached debris. The B-29's shape was still recognizable, unlike a plane supposedly shot down at sea. The 1,945 official report claimed the aircraft caught fire and crashed into the ocean, but the scene showed no evidence supporting that conclusion. A European technical team conducted a detailed inspection of the cockpit. In the navigation system area, they found clean mechanical cuts on the frame holding the gyro compass and navigation box. Screw holes showed clear signs of deliberate removal with tools, distinct from random crash damage. A German expert noted in the report, "There is evidence suggesting the navigation components were intentionally tampered with before the aircraft landed." In the bomb bay, the Japanese survey team found an old leather bag wedged in a metal crevice. Inside were yellowed but legible papers listing several American officers' names with strange symbols. Some names were crossed out, others accompanied by numbers and currency symbols. An international financial analyst on site determined this was not a standard administrative list, but resembled a record of covert transactions. It was unclear why such documents would be on a combat aircraft. Among the papers was a 1942-era map of Indochina, detailing sea routes from South China to the Gulf of Tonkin, extending to Saigon. 3 locations were marked in red with notations Route A, Route B, Route C. These matched strategic ports controlled by the French in the final stages of World War II. The documents were catalogued, photographed, and sealed. The investigation team's field report summarized an intact B-29 inches, an underground cave, no signs of fire or explosion, mechanical cuts on navigation components, a leather bag with a list of officers and financial symbols, and an Indochina map with sea routes. All evidence starkly contradicted the official record of the May 1945 mission. At Okinawa's police headquarters, international experts, Japanese representatives, and U.S. officers held an emergency meeting. The local police chief confirmed the findings were fully documented, but the U.S. immediately demanded all evidence be handed over to the military. The European delegation objected, emphasizing that this was historical evidence requiring independent analysis. Amid the debate, images and document copies had already been saved to multiple systems, ensuring they could not be entirely suppressed. The meeting's minutes noted, the site and evidence were placed under U.S. control, but third parties retained copies. A preliminary report listed the contradictions: an intact aircraft contradicting the shot-down claim, tampered navigation components, and the presence of financial documents, and an Indochina map unrelated to the bombing mission. As the minutes were finalized, a case thought settled since 1945 was officially reopened as an unresolved file, with an anomalous scene and details far beyond a routine mission. In Washington, Andrew Holloway was granted access to the National Military Archives after the international team submitted a formal request for cooperation. Files related to Captain James Holloway were marked in red. Historical review pending. Restricted. By regulation, a World War II casualty case should be declassified after 50 years. The fact that documents over 6 decades old remained restricted was unusual and immediately drew attention. The available file detailed the 27th of May, 1945 mission. The B-29, commanded by Holloway, departed Tinian at 10:40 p.m., heading for a military target in Okinawa. The last communication was recorded at 12:15 a.m., with coordinates off the island's east coast. Radar then indicated a crash into the sea. The conclusion stated, hit by Japanese anti-aircraft fire, entire crew missing, no wreckage found. Supplementary records confirmed the family received a death notification and benefits. Comparing this to the Okinawa findings, the discrepancies were stark. The B-29 was found in an underground cave on the island, intact, far from the reported crash site dozens of nautical miles away. No evidence suggested the plane had ever gone down at sea, as the military records claimed. Andrew requested access to the technical appendix and radio logs. The system returned a denial. Access denied. Clearance level above authorized. This indicated the existence of highly classified file sections, beyond the access of researchers or the pilot's relatives. The fact that a routine casualty mission still held documents at such a high classification level raised significant questions. While Andrew reviewed, an elderly archive advisor approached, introducing himself as retired Colonel Charles Whitmore, formerly of the Air Force Logistics Division. He said he had been at the archive since the late 1962, when a series of World War II files were revised. Mentioning Holloway's name, Whitmore lowered his voice. The Okinawa files were pulled and replaced back then. I saw original reports taken away, substituted with copies stripped of sensitive details. Whitmore recalled a key difference. The original report noted Holloway's flight path looping south of Okinawa, approaching the coast, not heading out to sea. It also included a reference to special cargo in the payload section, completely absent in the current copy. These details aligned with the intact aircraft found in the island's cave, not lost at sea. Andrew immediately documented Whitmore's statement and requested it be added to the record. He also extracted a copy of the current file, noting its special classification status. His preliminary report outlined key points. The Air Force's official record of the 27th of May 1945 night mission was marked Historical Review Pending, Restricted. The reported flight path did not match the coordinates where the aircraft was found. Retired Colonel Charles Whitmore's testimony confirmed the files were altered in the late 1962, removing references to special cargo and changing the flight path. After Andrew completed the extraction, internal security personnel required him to sign a non-disclosure agreement prohibiting copying or sharing the reviewed documents. This procedure was typically reserved for active classified files, not casualty records past their declassification deadline. Legal experts accompanying him noted the incident and added it to the collective report. The session concluded with the James Holloway file recognized as having serious discrepancies. The official report contradicted physical evidence in Okinawa. The flight path was misrecorded, and there were signs of tampering during archiving. Colonel Whitmore, as a witness, further confirmed that other Okinawa-related files from 1945 had been similarly handled. The summary was sent to the international expert team in Okinawa that same day. From a mere missing aircraft case, Captain James Holloway's file now appeared as one deliberately concealed. The case officially entered a new phase, cross-referencing field evidence with altered archives to determine the true nature of the 1945 mission. Andrew returned to Okinawa immediately after the archive session in Washington. The military records confirmed tampering, but connecting them to the site required a first-hand witness. Local police arranged a meeting with an elderly man from a coastal village south of the island. He was a wartime construction engineer, now in his 90s, introduced as Engineer Ueda, a familiar name in the community. The meeting took place in a small wooden house, walls lined with old blueprints. Ueda agreed to provide information after years of silence on the condition it be officially recorded with Okinawa police as witnesses. He began with a story from the summer of 1945, just after the Okinawa campaign ended. Then, in his early 20s, Ueda worked for a local technical team conscripted by U.S. forces. He recounted that one morning, American soldiers transported his engineering team by truck to a rocky hill area on the island's west side. They were ordered to expand an existing tunnel entrance. After clearing the obstructing earth and stone, light revealed a massive, intact aircraft inside. It was a B-29. I knew immediately from its shape and tail insignia, Ueda stated. The plane was pulled deeper into the cave using tow trucks and pulleys. No Japanese soldiers were involved. The entire operation was led by Americans. During the process, the U.S. soldiers instructed the engineers to build steel and concrete barriers to seal the cave entrance from the outside. They worked continuously for days, ensuring no trace of the entrance remained. When finished, a U.S. officer gathered the engineers and an interpreter. The order was clear. Say this plane crashed into the sea. No one is to mention this cave again. Ueda remembered vividly because, at that young age, he had never encountered such a secretive order. He saw multiple crates removed from the aircraft before the cave was sealed. These were loaded onto covered military trucks. No engineers were allowed near them. Ueda only glimpsed English letter abbreviations on some crates. The police recorded his full testimony. When asked why he stayed silent for 60 years, Ueda explained that shortly after the sealing, 2 engineers from his team disappeared without a trace. The community speculated they were eliminated for leaking what they saw. This instilled fear, leading him to stay silent, even to family. Only when news of the B-29 discovery spread did he decide to speak, believing the truth should finally be known. Andrew immediately requested copies of Ueda's surviving cave blueprints. Among the aged papers was a sketch of the cave entrance and truck routes, which matched the 2005 survey site's coordinates with striking accuracy. During the testimony, a police officer asked, "Are you certain it was an American plane, not a Japanese one pulled inside?" Ueda replied firmly, "No mistake. The B-29 was too large. Only the Americans had them. I clearly saw the white star on its wings." He also confirmed no Japanese forces were involved. After the Okinawa campaign, Japanese troops on the island had been defeated or surrendered. Only U.S. soldiers controlled the operation. He described a gray-haired American officer as the main commander, accompanied by 2 interpreters and a heavily armed guard detail. The police concluded the testimony. The account aligns with physical evidence, supporting the hypothesis that the B-29 was not shot down at sea, as military records state, but was deliberately moved and hidden after the Okinawa campaign. Andrew relayed all this to the international expert team and added it to the investigation report. Ueda's blueprints and testimony became the first direct witness evidence confirming U.S. involvement in sealing and concealing the B-29 immediately after the war. The fact that a local engineer personally witnessed the process, combined with the mysterious disappearance of 2 colleagues, highlighted the sensitivity of the matter. These details not only contradicted the official record, but also opened a new line of investigation. The true role of the American officers who orchestrated the concealment of the aircraft in Okinawa's underground cave. The decayed documents recovered from the B-29's bomb bay were sent to an international archive laboratory in Naha for restoration. After weeks of processing with multispectral and infrared scanning, the faded text on the old papers gradually became legible. The initial results stunned the analysis team. Contrary to expectations that the documents were mission reports or combat maps, they turned out to be a set of contract records. The first page bore the title, Special Cargo, East Indochina Route. The content described an agreement to transport a special shipment from the U.S. base in Tinian to a receiving point in Indochina. The cargo was coded as ammunition and small arms, with symbols for light weapons, ammunition, and military spare parts. Parts of the document were completely decayed, but enough remained to confirm it was not a bombing order but a contract for covert weapons transport. Experts compared the signatures at the bottom. The delivering party was an American officer, rank of lieutenant colonel, with a name too faded to read fully but identifiable as starting with R. The counterpart's signature was handwritten with a blue ink seal, written in French, accompanied by a merchant symbol and the abbreviation Indochine Commerce. The lab confirmed the ink and paper-matched materials commonly used in 1942 French Indochina. Another torn page, found tucked within the file, had a handwritten note in English, Delivery Pilot, J. Holloway. This was a critical detail, proving James Holloway was not only assigned to fly, but was explicitly named in the contract as the pilot responsible for the transport. This directly contradicted the military report, claiming he was on a bombing mission. The international analysts compiled a comparison. 1945 official report. Bombing mission targeting Japanese logistics in Okinawa. Aircraft hit by anti-aircraft fire crashed into the sea. 2005 field evidence. Intact B-29 inches in underground cave. No signs of fire or explosion. Navigation components cut. Decayed documents. Contract for weapons transport. Signed by an American officer and a French merchant, with James Holloway explicitly named as the delivery pilot. All pointed to one conclusion. James Holloway was deceived into participating in an off-the-books mission. In a closed press briefing at Okinawa Police Headquarters, the expert team presented their findings. A British military historian remarked, "The documents reveal the existence of an arms smuggling network in the war's final stages. Indochina was unstable then, and various factions needed weapons. Assigning an American pilot to transport instead of bomb could be part of a covert deal." Japanese police added engineer Ueda's earlier testimony. He had witnessed U.S. soldiers removing crates from the aircraft before sealing the cave. These crates were likely the cargo referenced in the contract. Thus, the entire crew may have become unwitting witnesses and were eliminated to cover it up. From the decayed documents, financial experts noted a ledger listing large sums converted to francs of that era. Some figures matched 1,945 French commercial transactions in Indochina, when companies covertly sought to reclaim colonial interests amid Japan's impending surrender. The French signature further supported the hypothesis. The Holloway case involved not only the U.S. military but also French merchants and officials. A detailed report was drafted for the Allied Military History Commission. Okinawa police requested enhanced witness protection as the revelation could pose risks. Engineer Ueda was also cautioned, as his testimony aligned with the document evidence. International experts acknowledged this was the first time they had seen a World War II case with such stark contradictions between a combat death and a covert smuggling mission. In subsequent meetings, the biggest question was, who signed the contract on the American side? The signature was too faded to identify fully, but a marginal note mentioned Logistics Division, Pacific. This suggested the contract may have originated from battlefield logistics, not combat units. With the new data, the Indochina map found in the leather bag was reanalyzed. The marked sea routes aligned with shipping lanes through Haiphong and Saigon ports during French colonial rule. These could not be documents for an Okinawa bombing mission, but were navigation aids for a cross-regional transport. As the evidence came together, a clearer picture emerged. James Holloway and his crew were ordered to take off under the guise of a bombing mission, but the aircraft actually carried cargo and documents tied to a covert U.S.-French deal. The contract and map confirmed the pilot was a link in an arms transport network. The investigation team's preliminary conclusion, circulated narrowly, stated, "Special cargo equals weapons transport contract, signed by an American officer and French merchant." Pilot Holloway explicitly named as transporter. Military records were deliberately altered to conceal. Thus, after analyzing the decayed documents, the case shifted from a combat loss hypothesis to a pilot deceived into arms smuggling hypothesis. A major breakthrough was established. Captain James Holloway was not on any bombing mission in Okinawa. He was exploited in an internationally concealed scheme. Partially declassified Pacific Fleet radar data from the night of the 27th of May 1945, when Captain James Holloway's B-29 vanished, was sent to the Okinawa investigation team. The raw logs showed 8 aircraft departing Tinian for Okinawa on the same mission. All were recorded returning, except Holloway's, which lost signal completely at 12:15 a.m. No explosion, flare, or flash indicated a crash. The radar operator's technical note stated, "Signal lost, cause undetermined." To verify, Japanese experts provided combat logs from the anti-aircraft unit stationed in Okinawa. The report confirmed that on the night of May 27, anti-aircraft guns fired but recorded no hits. No Japanese pilots claimed a shootdown, and no wreckage recovery was reported. This fully contradicted the U.S. Records claim that Holloway's plane was hit by Japanese anti-aircraft fire and crashed into the sea. An international analyst compiled a comparison. 1,945 official record. Aircraft shot down at sea. Entire crew missing. Radar data. Signal lost abruptly. No evidence of explosion. Japanese report. No B-29 shot down in the area. These details suggested the shot down at sea scenario was fabricated to legitimize the disappearance. The technical team also noted the B-29 was fueled beyond normal levels before the flight. Logistics data recorded enough fuel for a long journey, far exceeding the needs of a few-hour Okinawa bombing mission. The Okinawa Police Investigation Summary stated, "No radar or field evidence confirmed a crash at sea. The enemy denied any shootdown. The aircraft was found intact in an underground cave on the island. Evidence of mechanical tampering with navigation systems. Excess fuel loaded." These factors supported the hypothesis that the crew was led into a staged scenario to erase traces. The plane was not shot down but was forced to land in the cave and later sealed. The crew, investigators concluded, became unwitting witnesses to a covert operation and were eliminated to ensure secrecy. The interim report to the International Commission concluded, the 1,945 U.S. military record was false. Captain James Holloway's mission was not a bombing run, and the shot down at sea narrative was created to conceal the truth. Andrew was summoned to Kadena Air Base after the international team's report was internally released. At the base gate, the Okinawa police convoy stopped, and only Andrew was allowed entry. Guards recorded his personal details, checked his documents, and permitted passage. The atmosphere inside was starkly different. Strict, cold, every move monitored. In the main meeting room, 3 U.S. officers awaited. The leader, a colonel from the Base Security Division, spoke firmly. "All activities related to the B-29 found in Okinawa will be directly managed by the U.S. military. No individuals or foreign organizations are permitted further access to the site." A formal document was presented, demanding the handover of all evidence, including the leather bag, decayed documents, Indochina map, and analysis copies. Andrew objected, citing that the evidence was documented under Japanese police and international expert oversight, making it non-retrievable. Another officer interrupted, emphasizing, "Failure to comply will hold you accountable for unauthorized possession of classified materials. This is a U.S. national security matter." The meeting was tense, every word recorded, each statement a direct warning. During the exchange, Andrew's phone buzzed. He glanced discreetly at the screen, a message from an unknown number. "James didn't crash at sea. Look in Indochina." The brief message, without identifying markers, arrived precisely as the U.S. military insisted the plane crashed offshore and demanded the case be closed. This suggested an insider was deliberately steering the investigation. Andrew remained silent, not mentioning the message in front of the officers. The meeting ended with an order. Within 72 hours, all document copies must be submitted to the U.S. side. They stated they would continue review and disclose when appropriate. A pre-drafted memorandum forced Andrew to sign acknowledgement of the directive. Leaving the meeting, Andrew was escorted out. Passing the administrative area, he noticed sealed containers labeled Archive Secure Transfer. Technical staff were loading them onto military vehicles. A Japanese police source later confirmed these were the cave's artifacts secretly removed from Okinawa. In a closed meeting with local police that evening, Andrew reported the Kadena events. The U.S. military's tightening control over the site and demand for copies jeopardized the investigation. The Okinawa police chief remarked, "There's clearly a cover-up. If we don't retain at least some independent evidence, the case will be buried again." European experts agreed and decided to disperse data across multiple international channels to prevent total seizure. The anonymous message became the discussion's focus. The instruction to look in Indochina suggested the evidence trail extended beyond Okinawa. A French historian proposed that colonial archives in Paris, or Old Saigon, might hold traces of weapons transactions. If true, this could be key to proving why the B-29 was hidden rather than deployed in combat. Meanwhile, U.S. pressure escalated. A diplomatic note was sent to Japan's foreign ministry, demanding immediate transfer of all B-29-related files. Japanese media began leaking details of the dispute, drawing public attention. To avoid a diplomatic crisis, Okinawa police stayed silent publicly but covertly supported Andrew internally. A week later, Andrew received an envelope slipped into his hotel mailbox. Inside was a faded copy of an old report, stamped Logistics Division Pacific. At the bottom, a note read, "Special cargo to Indochina. Delivery assigned, Captain J-GSR, Holloway." The paper matched the anonymous message, confirming the Indochina lead was credible. The copied document underwent preliminary analysis. Paper, ink, and typeface were consistent with 1,942 military records. Though its origin couldn't be confirmed, its evidential value was clear. At least one document explicitly stated Holloway's flight was not for bombing Okinawa, but for transporting special cargo to Indochina. The expert team's report added a new conclusion. The U.S. military employed measures to suppress, seize, and remove evidence from Okinawa. The anonymous message and leaked document pointed to an Indochina investigation lead. Evidence suggested an insider source was intentionally guiding Andrew toward the truth. When the interim report was finalized, international experts confirmed. The Holloway case is no longer a singular disappearance. It's a link in a network transporting weapons to Indochina, concealed by a fabricated narrative since 1945. Andrew traveled to Tokyo to access war archives at Japan's National Defense Archives, which held intelligence records collected after Japan's surrender. With a French historian's assistance, he accessed overlooked files, commercial reports, maritime shipping logs, and route tracking records for French expeditionary forces in Indochina in 1945. In one file, Andrew found a familiar phrase, "Special Cargo, Indochina." Accompanying notes described a weapons transport route through the South China Sea, from Guam and Tinian to Haiphong and Saigon ports. Notably, the cargo manifest listed items matching the decayed documents from Holloway's B-29 bomb bay. Alongside was a mission assignment table. Pilot names were penciled in, many crossed out. Among them, besides Holloway, were three others: Captain Miller, Lieutenant Parker, and Major Dawson. Andrew cross-referenced these with the U.S. Air Force Casualty Database. All three were reported missing at sea in 1945. Their official reports followed the same structure: bombing mission, lost contact, shot down, no wreckage recovered. None had direct evidence of a sea crash, all relying on preliminary radar reports. Upon closer examination, Andrew noticed nearly identical patterns: signal lost near Okinawa, or en route to Taiwan. No radar record of explosion or flare. No wreckage recovered. Families received identical template letters. The file structure was so similar, it was clearly not coincidental. At a meeting in the Okinawa police office, Andrew presented his findings. He laid out the 4 cases side by side. Holloway, Miller, Parker, Dawson. Each described a similar scenario, concluding with, "Missing at sea, no bodies found." The international expert team concluded, James Holloway was not an isolated case. At least 3 other pilots were drawn into the same fabricated narrative. A French historian commented, "This could be an organized series of missions." Pilots were assigned under the pretext of bombing, but were actually transporting cargo. Once the mission was complete, or they discovered the truth, the entire crew was eliminated to erase traces. Andrew added details from the Indochina map found in the leather bag. The marked routes A, B, and C aligned with 3 ports mentioned in French records: Haiphong, Turan, Da Nang, and Saigon. This proved the map was not a stray document but part of the transport network. A British financial expert analyzed. Looking at the figures in the decayed documents, there are large sums with franc symbols. When compared to French commercial records, the money flows match. This means weapons were exchanged for economic benefits for colonial merchant groups. The International Investigation Team's new report concluded, at least 4 B-29 missions in 1945 followed the same disappearance pattern. The pilots, including James Holloway, were listed in weapons transport documents to Indochina. Casualty reports for all 4 cases had repetitive details and conflicted with radar data. Clear evidence pointed to an organized effort to erase traces after completing transports. This information was leaked to international media through a confidential channel. Within days, a major Paris newspaper published a brief article on mysterious missing U.S. pilots on the Indochina route. The news sparked immediate reactions. The U.S. Defense Department issued a denial, stating there was no compelling evidence and the missing cases were routine combat losses. However, evidence kept surfacing. A supplemental French archive file revealed a list of 1,945 weapons transactions with a note, "Shipment via Okinawa, completed." This matched the timing of Holloway's disappearance. At the next closed meeting, Okinawa police assessed. This case doesn't involve just one pilot. It's a recurring pattern. The elimination of the crew had a clear purpose: to prevent them from revealing the truth about the Indochina transport route. The expert team decided to expand the investigation, reviewing all B-29 disappearances from Tinian in 1945 to identify similar cases. International media began to take notice, but the U.S. continued to exert pressure to suppress the spread of information. Evidence from Indochina opened an entirely new investigative path. There was no longer any doubt. The Holloway case was not isolated but part of a larger network, concealed by a series of falsified reports. Indochina records expanded the investigation, but the team still needed technical evidence to explain why James Holloway's B-29 landed precisely in an Okinawa cave instead of continuing its journey. A lead emerged when a former American engineer, Robert Kane, now over 90, contacted the team through a veterans channel. Kane had served at Tinian in 1945 as a navigation system maintenance engineer for the B-29 fleet. During a testimony session at a California nursing home, Kane provided startling information. He confirmed personally installing a secret device on certain aircraft listed for special mission. The device, not in standard technical manuals, was codenamed the Navigation Override Box. It was a small electrical box wired directly into the gyrocompass and radio navigation system. When remotely activated, it could interfere with signals, making pilots believe they were on course while the aircraft was actually guided to a predetermined location. Kane vividly recalled that one of the planes he was ordered to equip was the B-29, commanded by Captain James Holloway. The order came from a senior logistics officer, not from the technical unit. They emphasized no maintenance log entries, and that all work had to be completed before the 27th of May 1945. After installation, Kane was told to leave the area and not participate in the test flight. When asked about the device's functionality, Kane explained, if they wanted, they could make the plane loop around, then force it to land at a prepared site. The pilot wouldn't know until it was too late. He also confirmed the technology wasn't U.S. developed but an adapted version of German navigation equipment captured during the war. This testimony was compared to the scene. In the B-29's cockpit in Okinawa, the international technical team had found mechanical cut marks on the navigation system. Kane's report explained perfectly. The navigation override box was removed after the forced landing. The remaining traces of tampering showed deliberate interference. Andrew presented Kane's full testimony in a closed meeting with Okinawa police and experts. Combining the data, the scenario was reconstructed. James Holloway took off from Tinian believing he was on a bombing mission, but the aircraft was fitted with a navigation override box. Near Okinawa, the device was activated, forcing the plane off course to a pre-prepared cave site. The aircraft made an emergency landing, and the entire crew was eliminated to erase traces. To corroborate the testimony, the team accessed OSS, CIA predecessor, technical documents. A partially declassified 1,990 seconds report described tests of a flight control device based on captured German technology. Though it didn't mention Okinawa, it confirmed the existence of the device Kane described. Okinawa police added to the record. Witness engineer Robert Kane confirmed installing a navigation override box on Holloway's B-29. The device could forcibly alter the flight path, guiding the plane to an unintended landing site. The B-29 scene showed mechanical cuts consistent with device removal. Conclusion: the plane didn't crash at sea or get shot down. The crew was led into a technical trap. Andrew also received another anonymous message to a secure email. Your grandfather never bombed Okinawa. Look in the Special Mission Pacific Logistics list. This aligned with Kane's testimony and opened a new lead, tracking down Special Mission in U.S. Pacific Logistics records. In a closed press briefing, a European expert remarked, "If verified, this is evidence the U.S. military used forced navigation technology to conceal illegal missions." James Holloway and his crew were not war casualties, but victims of a designed technical elimination. The Holloway case now escalated. Beyond falsified casualty reports, it revealed secret navigation technology used for forced landings. The truth became clearer. James's B-29 was never meant to bomb Okinawa. It was rigged with a trap from Tinian, turning the crew into unwitting transporters, then eliminated when no longer useful. Information about the navigation override box prompted the team to seek Okinawa witnesses who might have seen what happened after the B-29's forced landing. Local police located a rare witness, Shigeru Arakaki, now over 90, living in a small village at the base of the island's western mountains. In 1945, at 15, Arakaki's family farmed and raised livestock near caves used by Japanese forces. During the testimony session, Arakaki recounted a memory he had never dared share publicly. One night, after the main battle in Okinawa ended, he and his father were collecting farming tools in the fields when they saw floodlights from the ravine. They hid in the bushes and observed. "I saw American soldiers, many of them, coming out of a cave. They carried stretchers covered with tarps, shaped exactly like human bodies. There were at least 6 or 7 such stretchers. All were loaded onto military trucks." Arakaki clearly remembered the uniforms and the rifles held by the guarding soldiers. He and his father stayed silent, not daring to move. When the trucks left, they quietly returned home. The next morning, news spread across the island. An American plane had been shot down at sea, all pilots missing. "I heard the news and got chills. I had seen bodies taken from the cave, but the papers said they vanished offshore," Arakaki affirmed. He also recalled details of wooden crates transported with the convoy. Some had white-painted letter markings, unlike standard military supplies. The crates were loaded onto separate trucks, not with the stretchers. Arakaki and his father speculated at the time that they might be war spoils, but now he believed they were the cargo Holloway transported. The Okinawa police report recorded the testimony in full detail. A civilian witness confirmed seeing American soldiers remove multiple stretchers with bodies from the cave. The next morning, newspapers reported the pilots as missing at sea. Special wooden crates, distinct from standard military supplies, accompanied the convoy. The witness remained silent for decades out of fear of repercussions. Andrew cross-referenced this testimony with the field evidence and Robert Kane's findings. The pieces aligned, the plane was forced to land, the crew exited the cockpit alive, then was eliminated on site. The bodies were transported by truck, while the plane and remaining cargo were sealed in the cave. In a meeting with the international expert team, a British historian analyzed, "If it were just a combat accident, no one would need to move bodies at night and conceal them. This proves the entire crew was deliberately handled to prevent them from revealing the truth." A French journalist attending as an observer noted the consistency. In the files of the 3 other pilots missing at sea, their families received similar notifications with no concrete evidence. "It's possible they were all handled the same way," he suggested. When the report was finalized, Okinawa police placed Arakaki under witness protection. He had faced indirect threats multiple times in the 1,950 seconds when strangers warned him not to mention what he saw. That fear kept him silent for over half a century. Now, as the truth emerged, his testimony became the most critical piece, confirming the case was not a combat loss, but an organized elimination. The new report sent to the International Commission immediately created diplomatic pressure. The truth from a civilian witness, corroborated by the scene, documents, and technician testimony, made the Holloway story undeniable as mere rumor. The case now took the shape of a concealed wartime crime. After the report on Arakaki's testimony reached the International Commission, pressure on the U.S. government escalated rapidly. Within a week, Andrew Holloway received an official telegram from the U.S. Center, Defense Attaché in Tokyo, inviting him to Washington to discuss cooperation in resolving the matter. A flight ticket and itinerary were provided, along with a diplomatic escort. In Washington, Andrew was taken directly to an administrative building near the Pentagon. In a closed meeting room, 3 senior officials awaited. One introduced himself as from the Office of the Secretary of Defense, another from the Military Archives Bureau, and the third as a national security advisor. They got straight to the point. "We understand you have significant data and witnesses. We propose an honorable resolution to conclude this." On the table, they presented a file. A proposal to posthumously award Captain James Holloway the Medal of Honor for sacrificing his life in the Okinawa bombing mission. Accompanying it was a special compensation package for the family, far exceeding standard amounts. An official explained, "Your family will receive deserved recognition, and Holloway's name will be honored in Air Force history. In return, you will cease all investigation activities and disclose no further information to the press." Andrew demanded clarification on why silence was required. The National Security Advisor replied, "Some wartime events should never be unearthed. If spread, they would severely harm diplomatic relations and military credibility." When Andrew refused to agree, the room's atmosphere shifted. The Defense Department representative lowered his voice threateningly. "Think carefully. Continuing this investigation will destroy your career and reputation. We can charge you with leaking classified materials. You'll lose everything." During the meeting, an aide inadvertently revealed a thin document. Its cover read, "Pacific Logistics, Indochina Operations." Though only a glimpse, Andrew noticed the same markings as the decayed documents from the B-29. This confirmed that special cargo files were stored at the highest levels in Washington. After the meeting, Andrew was required to sign a confidentiality agreement. He refused and was promptly escorted out. As the elevator doors closed, one of the officials called out, "You're going too far. This is your final warning." In an urgent video conference with the international expert team that evening, Andrew detailed the meeting. The report noted, the U.S. government offered a medal and compensation in exchange for silence. Upon refusal, Andrew faced direct threats. The case involved Pacific Logistics, Indochina Operations files, held at the highest Pentagon levels. A British analyst concluded, "This is indirect evidence. The case extends beyond unit or logistics levels. It reaches the highest echelons of the U.S. Defense Department." French and Japanese experts jointly warned that all future investigation activities would face direct interference from Washington. Okinawa police immediately strengthened witness protection, particularly for engineer Ueda and farmer Arakaki. The leaked documents, civilian witness, and technician testimony were no longer scattered pieces. They formed a cohesive picture. James Holloway didn't die in combat. He and his crew were used as tools in a covert arms transport network, and when the truth risked exposure, the Defense Department's highest levels crafted the "missing at sea" narrative. After returning to Tokyo from Washington, Andrew was contacted by Michael Harrington, a veteran investigative reporter from the New York Times. Harrington had been tracking the Holloway case since news of the B-29 surfaced in Japanese media. He proposed collaboration. "If you want the truth to come to light, the press is the only way, but I need solid evidence." Andrew agreed. The meeting was arranged at a discreetly rented office in Naha, Okinawa. In their first working session, Harrington presented documents obtained through private channels. Notably, a copy of the Okinawa Archive catalog listed all records related to the 1945 campaign. It included a file-coded Oki 4529SC, described as Special Mission Handling Report, May 1945. However, when Andrew visited the archive to check, the file was gone. The librarian confirmed the catalog entry existed, but the storage shelf was empty. Harrington revealed that, through an insider source, he learned that days after the B-29 was found in 2005, a group of U.S. officers visited the archive, citing joint inventory, and removed several boxes of documents. Since then, no one had seen the Oki 4529SC file. This indicated the U.S. government had acted to erase evidence as soon as the site was exposed. To verify, Andrew and Harrington reviewed the archive's loan log. It showed an entry on the 20th of July 2005 for U.S. Military Unit Records Inventory, but no specific documents were listed. The next day, the catalog system was updated, marking certain files, including Oki 4529SC, as under review. This was concrete administrative proof that documents were removed after the plane's discovery. In a closed briefing with the expert team, Andrew and Harrington jointly concluded the Oki 4529SC file was directly tied to Holloway's mission. The file vanished from the archive days after the plane was found. There was systematic evidence suppression to block independent investigation. Harrington decided to draft an article but held off publishing until more physical evidence was secured to avoid dismissal. They returned to the sealed cave site. With discreet Okinawa police assistance, they accessed a temporary evidence storage. There, Harrington photographed sealed wooden crates with codes matching the French weapons transport catalog. These images became additional proof that special cargo existed and was linked to an arms smuggling network. In an informal interview, an Okinawa archive employee revealed, "We were forced to sign handover documents without seeing valid authorization. They just said it was an Allied forces order." Right after, several boxes of files disappeared. This statement was recorded and included in the international expert team's report. Andrew and Harrington planned their next step, using the press to force the government to confront the issue. Harrington prepared a series of investigative articles, the first to reveal the disappearance of the Oki 4529SC file. However, he warned Andrew, "When we publish, they'll hit back hard. You need to be ready for political and legal pressure." The International Investigation Report was updated with new points. Direct interference in the Okinawa archive in 2005. Documents tied to Holloway's mission were removed. This was evidence suppression, proving a cover-up spanning not just 1945, but 60 years after. When the report reached the United Nations, some Human Rights Commission members called for an international hearing on U.S. pilot disappearances in wartime. The Pentagon promptly issued a rebuttal, claiming all missing cases were transparently resolved. But the truth about the Oki 4529SC file had spread among scholars and journalists. Harrington's involvement officially propelled the Holloway case into a new phase, from a classified military file to a publicly investigated story in international media. The missing Okinawa archive documents and Harrington's evidence prompted the team to broaden their search. Through an international journalist network, Andrew received a leaked document from inside the Pentagon, a thin, covertly photographed file titled Phantom Cargo, Pacific Operations 1945. The term phantom cargo appeared for the first time, becoming a key for the next investigative phase. The document listed multiple B-29 missions in a table. Andrew noted that, besides Holloway's, at least 4 other missions had similar descriptions. Departing Tinian, stated target Okinawa bombing, sudden loss of contact, concluded, shot down at sea, no wreckage. The B-29 serial numbers matched long-standing unsolved disappearances. Harrington cross-checked with the U.S. Air Force's public database. The results confirmed, the 4 missions were listed as MIA, missing in action. Their casualty reports used the same template, differing only in pilot names and dates. This repetitive structure reinforced the hypothesis that the entire affair followed a standardized script. Notably, the leaked document had a column labeled Logistics Code. All 4 missions, plus Holloway's, were marked PC-45. Experts confirmed this stood for Phantom Cargo 1945. Thus, the 5 missing B-29 seconds were not isolated but part of the same covert operation. In a meeting with the international expert team in Naha, Andrew presented the findings. He laid out the 5 cases: Holloway, Miller, Parker, Dawson, and another pilot, Richards. All were missing at sea with nearly identical reports. The Washington leak confirmed they were part of the same secret operation. A British historian remarked, "This explains why all reports follow a rigid template. It's not the randomness of war, but a standardized script to conceal." A French expert added, "The name Phantom Cargo says it all. These weren't bombing missions, but covert cargo transports. American pilots were used as a front for an arms smuggling network." Harrington continued tapping his journalistic sources. He uncovered a partially declassified note from a 1945 logistics worker stating, Mission PC-4503. Cargo departed Tinian, intended destination Indochina. Official report, missing South China Sea. This was direct evidence proving Phantom Cargo had specific mission codes, not a fabrication. When cross-referenced with the Indochina map and the officer list in Holloway's leather bag, the alignment was clear. Many names from the list reappeared in the Phantom Cargo records. This indicated the network operated extensively, involving multiple logistics officers and French merchants. In the consolidated report to the United Nations, the investigation team wrote, "At least 5 B-29 missions missing in 1945 followed the same report pattern. These missions were coded PC-45, Phantom Cargo, True Nature, Covert Weapons Transport to Indochina, disguised as bombing missions. Pilots and crews were deliberately eliminated to erase traces." This discovery shocked the expert team. A Japanese analyst commented, "The horror isn't the external enemy, but the betrayal from within. These pilots believed they were sacrificing for combat, but they were discarded as tools." Harrington prepared to publish his first investigative series in the New York Times, tentatively titled Phantom Cargo, Secret Missions and the Missing Pilots of 1945. The article would present evidence of the operation, starting with Holloway's case. Meanwhile, U.S. pressure intensified. The Defense Department issued a diplomatic note claiming the disclosure of leaked documents threatened national security. But with the public evidence and intact B-29 inches, the cave, civilian witnesses, technical testimony, and the Phantom Cargo leak, the truth was no longer hypothetical. The investigation team decided to enhance protection for Andrew and Harrington. They knew exposing Phantom Cargo would shake powerful figures, but they agreed. This truth no longer belongs to one family or nation. It's part of world history. Andrew pursued Japanese sources, as only their anti-aircraft reports could directly contradict U.S. military records. Through a Tokyo University scholar, he was introduced to Yamashiro Kenji, a 96-year-old former staff officer of Japan's 32nd Anti-Aircraft Division, now living in an Osaka suburb nursing home. Yamashiro had compiled firepower reports in Okinawa during May 1945, when Holloway's B-29 was reportedly shot down at sea. During the meeting, Yamashiro, frail but sharp, confirmed, "No B-29 was shot down off Okinawa that night. We logged every shell fired. If we'd hit one, there'd be evidence, and the pilot would have been credited. There was none. It was just gunfire into the air, then nothing. Andrew presented the 1,945 U.S. report claiming, "Hit by Japanese anti-aircraft crashed at sea." Yamashiro shook his head. "That's fabricated. I was at headquarters. We reported no kills." The next morning, we only heard from the Americans that one of their planes went missing. When we compared, we saw the contradiction, but no one asked Japan's opinion after the war. Notably, Yamashiro kept a small notebook where he'd handwritten notes after Japan's surrender. One entry read, "American officer intel. Some B-29 missions were not combat, related but secret. Missing at sea. Reports were a cover." When asked why he noted this, Yamashiro explained that during early occupation, some U.S. officers revealed it to him as a test. They wanted our silence. In return, they promised to let us retain some military structure for post-war rebuilding. The international team verified Yamashiro's notebook. The paper, ink, and handwriting matched the era. The content showed Japan not only knew no shootdown occurred, but was aware of a U.S. plot. They chose silence, as it benefited Japan's position during post-war reconstruction. The meeting's record detailed, a former Japanese officer confirmed no B-29 was shot down in the reported area. The U.S. claim of hit by anti-aircraft crashed at sea was fabricated. Post-war, the U.S. covertly negotiated Japan's silence in exchange for retaining some military and political privileges during Reconstruction. In the next closed meeting in Naha, Andrew presented Yamashiro's testimony and notebook. A Japanese expert stated, "This is the first direct evidence from Japan confirming they didn't shoot down any B-29. Their silence wasn't just a lack of information, but a political bargain." A French scholar added, "If Japan had exposed the truth post-war, the entire Phantom cargo operation might have been revealed. But they stayed silent to secure U.S. agreement not to fully dismantle their military structure. This explains why Japan was quickly rearmed during the Cold War." Harrington, the New York Times reporter, documented the developments. He planned a separate article analyzing U.S.-Japan post-war relations, with the Holloway case as a prime example of covert deals. The deaths of these American pilots were hidden not just by their own government, but by their former enemy, all for strategic gain. The updated report to the United Nations concluded, Japanese forces didn't shoot down Holloway's B-29. The U.S. report was fabricated. Japan deliberately stayed silent, exchanging their silence for benefits in the post-1945 global order. As this information entered the international record, the Holloway case turned another page. It was no longer just a U.S. secret, but a political bargain between an occupying power and a defeated nation, with the lives of pilots as invisible bargaining chips. After the Japanese evidence was shared internally with the investigation team, pressure from multiple fronts intensified noticeably. Andrew Holloway began noticing he was being followed. During his days in Naha, Okinawa, he frequently saw the same black car parked not far from his hotel, with its license plate changed several times but the model unchanged. Whenever he left the hotel, two unfamiliar men trailed him at a safe distance. Okinawa police confirmed through security cameras that Andrew was indeed being monitored by unidentified individuals. Simultaneously, New York Times reporter Michael Harrington reported that his personal computer and phone were cyber-attacked. All drafts of his Phantom cargo investigation vanished overnight, replaced by a system message, "Access denied, unauthorized." Cybersecurity experts found traces indicating the attack originated from a government server network. This clearly proved a professional group was working to block the information's release. On September 12, Andrew left Okinawa for a meeting in Tokyo. On the highway, a small truck suddenly overtook his car and braked sharply in front. The collision caused Andrew's vehicle to flip and spin multiple times. Fortunately, his seatbelt saved him, and he sustained only minor injuries. The scene investigation revealed the truck had vanished from the route, and cameras at nearby toll booths were disabled during the same time frame. Conclusion: this was not an ordinary accident, but a deliberately staged incident. The event was immediately reported to the investigation file. The international expert team added, An assassination attempt was made on Andrew Holloway, targeting the key witness and investigator of the case. Concurrently, Harrington received a threatening message. "Stop writing or you will join them." The message clearly alluded to the fate of witnesses like engineer Ueda and farmer Arakaki. Okinawa police heightened protection for the two key witnesses. However, days later, Ueda narrowly escaped a break-in at his home. The back door was pried open, but the intruder fled when security arrived. Arakaki received a parcel containing a dagger and a note. "Stay silent or die." These pieces of evidence were collected, documented, and sent to the United Nations as an addendum to the report. In an emergency meeting of the expert team in Tokyo, a British analyst concluded, "We're no longer dealing with mere file suppression. This is an organized campaign involving surveillance, cyber attacks, and assassination attempts. Their goal is to eliminate all remaining witnesses and evidence." Andrew received information from an anonymous source via a secure channel. Phantom Cargo wasn't just an operation, it was a transnational network. If you continue, you'll touch untouchable people. This aligned with ongoing events, proving the opposing group closely monitored his every move. Harrington, despite the data attack, resorted to old methods. Handwritten notes stored in a secure safe at the U.S. Embassy in Tokyo. He declared in a closed meeting, "If they want to stop me, they'll have to face me publicly. We can't let this story be buried again." The International Investigation Team issued formal recommendations. Enhance protection for witnesses and investigators. Disperse data copies across multiple countries. Release partial information to the press to prevent silent elimination. When news of Andrew's accident reached Japanese media, public suspicion grew that it wasn't routine. Some local papers published articles titled, "B-29 Case Investigator Survives Mysterious Crash." The U.S. PAC's government quickly claimed it was a traffic accident, but images of the scene and disabled camera data sparked public outrage. In this context, Andrew and Harrington knew they were entering the investigation's most dangerous phase. They faced not only hidden documents, but a network willing to kill to keep secrets. After the staged highway crash, Okinawa police expanded protection for Andrew Holloway. Meanwhile, the international expert team urged finding more hard evidence to prove the full Phantom Cargo conspiracy. A confidential source from the Okinawa Prefectural Archive contacted Andrew, revealing that some documents not seized by the U.S. in 2005 remained in an overlooked auxiliary storage drawer, unindexed in the digital system. One evening, escorted by local police, Andrew and Harrington visited the archive. The boxes were thick with dust, papers yellowed. While sifting through, they found a thin file stamped "Confidential Pacific 1945. Inside was a weapons transport contract, clearly signed by a U.S. lieutenant colonel with the full surname recorded. The critical detail was a red stamp at the bottom. OSS Liaison, approved. The contract detailed a shipment of submachine guns, ammunition, and light explosives from Tinian to a delivery point in Indochina. The delivery pilot section listed Captain J. Holloway. Thus, the document confirmed James Holloway was officially assigned to a transport mission, completely contradicting the public casualty report. Experts on site documented this was not merely an internal military contract. The OSS Liaison stamp showed U.S. intelligence CIA's predecessor approved it. This proved Phantom Cargo was not just a military logistics operation, but involved intelligence coordination. At the next morning's closed meeting, a British analyst remarked, "The OSS stamp shows the conspiracy's scale is far larger. If intelligence was involved, this isn't just arms smuggling but a strategic covert operation." A French expert added, "The OSS was collaborating with various factions in Indochina then. They wanted post-war influence, and weapons were the tool. American pilots became a shield for this political commercial network." Andrew and Harrington immediately digitized the contract, sending copies via secure channels to Europe. They feared it would be seized or destroyed if kept only in Japan. Indeed, a day later, the Okinawa archive was broken into. Police found a pried door, but the original file box had been moved elsewhere. Clearly, someone closely tracked the investigation and aimed to erase all traces. The updated International Expert Team report stated, A weapons transport contract from Tinian to Indochina was recovered, signed by a U.S. officer. The contract bore an OSS approval stamp, confirming U.S. intelligence involvement. James Holloway was named in the delivery pilot section, proving he was deceived into transporting. A break-in attempt aimed to destroy the document shortly after its discovery. In a secret press briefing Harrington held with trusted journalists, he presented a photo of the contract. Though the full text wasn't released, the OSS liaison, approved, stamp alone, caused a shockwave. Historians immediately commented, "If true, this is the first case proving the OSS used American pilots as cover for illegal Indochina operations." The U.S. responded swiftly with a diplomatic note denying the document's authenticity, claiming it was forged. But the denial couldn't erase the truth. The original was verified and documented by multiple international experts on site. From that moment, the Holloway case was no longer about a single missing pilot. It became an international file exposing collusion between the U.S. SAFTR, military, OSS intelligence, and French merchants in Indochina. As the international team processed the OSS-stamped contract, a new figure emerged. Through Harrington's veteran community contacts, Andrew received a message from a San Diego, California, nursing home. Arthur McMillan, 94, a former civilian construction engineer conscripted by the U.S. military in 1945, wanted to meet. His message was brief. "I was in Okinawa when the B-29 was sealed. I want to speak before it's too late." Andrew immediately arranged the trip. The meeting took place in a small room where McMillan lived simply, surrounded by a few wartime mementos. The elderly man trembled but had resolute eyes, as if carrying a decades-long burden. "I was one of the engineers who directly sealed the cave containing Holloway's B-29 with concrete," he began. "I stayed silent because of an oath and fear, but now I must speak." He recounted that in June 1945, McMillan and a group of civilian engineers were ordered by the Pacific Command to Okinawa. They were taken to a rocky mountain area in the west, where U.S. soldiers were already waiting. There he clearly saw an intact B-29 inside a cave. "We asked why the plane wasn't towed out," McMillan recalled, but an officer snapped, "No one is to know about this mission. Your job is to seal the entrance, nothing else." He and his team received technical diagrams detailing how to build steel barriers and pour multiple layers of concrete. The work lasted over a week. During that time, armed soldiers guarded the site 24/7, allowing no one to approach. McMillan noted seeing several crates removed from the plane and immediately transported away, bearing unfamiliar markings. When a young engineer inquired, an officer warned, "The next question will make you disappear." What haunted McMillan his entire life was the final brief meeting. The commanding officer, a colonel, gathered the engineers and issued an order. "From now on, no one speaks of this mission. All official reports have been prepared. If you talk, you'll be branded a traitor." Each was then forced to sign a strict confidentiality agreement. Andrew asked why he was speaking now. McMillan replied, "I've lived my whole life haunted. We knew we were burying the truth. I don't want to take this secret to my grave. And you need to know, the order didn't come from the field officer, it came from Washington. They directed the plane sealing, keeping it from any other agency." The old man handed Andrew a faded piece of paper, a copy he'd secretly kept since 1945. It briefly read, "Order confirmed. Washington liaison. Secure the site." Though yellowed and the ink faded, the words "Washington liaison" were clear. This was evidence that the sealing wasn't a local decision but a direct order from the highest levels in the capital. McMillan's testimony was documented on site, with Harrington signing as a witness. The international expert team later verified the document's authenticity through ink and paper analysis, confirming it matched 1,940 seconds U.S. administrative materials. The new report added these points. Witness Arthur McMillan confirmed directly participating in sealing the cave with Holloway's B-29. He heard a clear order. "No one is to know about this mission." The order wasn't from the local commander but directed from Washington. Physical evidence, a paper noting, "Order confirmed, Washington liaison, secure the site." At the subsequent international meeting, a British historian stated, "If the order came from Washington, It means the highest command structure was involved in the cover-up. This is no longer a tactical error but a national political military conspiracy. A French expert added, "This explains why files were altered in the 1,960 seconds. From the start, the cover-up decision rested with Washington's leadership. The entire system collaborated to keep it secret." Harrington recorded the testimony and prepared to publish the next article series. He asserted, "Macmillan's confession will be the final piece, showing this wasn't the act of a few corrupt officers. It was a plan directed from the top." From that moment, the Holloway case was no longer just about a missing pilot. It became evidence of a wartime crime concealed by the U.S. government at the highest level for nearly 80 years. The decision to hold an international press conference was approved after the team gathered sufficient evidence. The OSS-stamped transport contract, testimonies from engineer Ueda and farmer Arakaki, and the late confession of U.S. engineer Arthur Macmillan. The event was arranged in Tokyo, under the security oversight of Japanese police and UN observers. On the press conference day, the room was packed with reporters from major outlets: New York Times, Washington Post, BBC, NHK, Le Monde. On the stage, Andrew Holloway sat alongside reporter Michael Harrington. Beside them were Macmillan, Ueda, and Arakaki, all present to publicly share their testimonies. Andrew presented the chain of evidence: images of the rusted B-29 Okinawa's cave, the leather bag with the U.S. officer list and Indochina map, the weapons transport contract signed by a U.S. officer with an OSS liaison stamp, the faded paper noting, "Order confirmed, Washington liaison, secure the site." Harrington then displayed a comparison of missing B-29 missions, proving they were part of the Phantom cargo operation. Witnesses were invited to speak. Ueda recounted being forced to build steel barriers and pour concrete to seal the cave. Arakaki described American soldiers removing tarp-covered stretchers from the cave at night, followed by news the next day of pilots missing at sea. Macmillan, voice trembling, confirmed he was among the engineers who sealed the cave under Washington's orders. No one was to know about this mission. The evidence was presented step by step, sparking a flurry of questions from the room. A BBC reporter asked, "Is there any U.S. government document confirming the operation's name?" Harrington replied, "So far, we have the OSS-stamped contract, but we lack the overarching document." At that moment, an unexpected event occurred. A French journalist stood, announcing he had just received a leaked file from France's National Archives. A USB was plugged into the projector. A May 1945 document appeared, stamped Top Secret, Office of Strategic Services. It read, "Operation Phantom Cargo, coordination with Pacific Logistics Division. Objective: transport arms to Indochina. Cover story: B-29 night bombing missions." The room erupted. This was the first document directly naming Phantom Cargo in an OSS record. Reporters snapped photos and streamed live to their newsrooms. Harrington verified the ink, typeface, and format, confirming, "This matches 1,940 seconds OSS standards." The U.S. Defense Department immediately issued a statement through its Tokyo embassy. Allegations about Phantom Cargo are a conspiracy theory. The released documents lack legal validity. The spokesperson called the evidence sophisticated forgeries. However, the response fell flat. A BBC reporter countered, "If fake, why do all witnesses, the scene, and the contract align?" The event was broadcast live on Japanese television and international channels. Media outlets published headlines: OSS-backed Phantom Cargo, secret files exposed in Tokyo, Le Monde. Phantom Cargo, U.S. pilots as cover for arms smuggling, New York Times. U.S. secret operation, evidence unveiled in Japan, BBC. UN observers on site documented. The leaked OSS document directly referenced Operation Phantom Cargo. Its content matched presented evidence. Transport contract, Indochina map, witness testimonies. This was proof of OSS and U.S. military involvement in the operation. The U.S. continued to deny, but public pressure spiraled beyond their control. Harrington declared to the press, "We will release the full investigative series next week. What you've seen today is just the beginning. The press conference ended in media chaos. Japanese police escorted Andrew, Harrington, and the witnesses out through a back exit to avoid the crowding press. The Holloway case, hidden for 80 years, had become an international political event, forcing the U.S. to face global public scrutiny. After the Tokyo press conference and the leaked OSS document confirming phantom cargo, U.S. public opinion exploded. Domestic media, previously cautious, now reported extensively. Families of other missing pilots began publicly demanding explanations. Under this pressure, the Senate Armed Services Committee was forced to hold a special hearing in Washington, the first time the Holloway case and phantom cargo were brought before the American public. The Senate chamber was packed. Witnesses included Andrew Holloway, reporter Michael Harrington, and 2 civilian witnesses from Okinawa under protection, engineer Ueda and farmer Arakaki. The key U.S. witness, Arthur McMillan, the engineer who confessed to sealing the cave, was present, seen as the decisive card as the first American confirming orders from Washington. The hearing began with questioning the Defense Department. Both Democratic and Republican senators were sharp. Senator Collins stated bluntly, "Why do we have 1,945 casualty reports claiming pilots were shot down at sea when field evidence and OSS documents show they were forced to land and eliminated? This is a betrayal of soldiers' families." Senator Martinez added, "The military has deceived the public for 80 years. Who is accountable for this cover-up?" The Pentagon sent Lieutenant General Walker as a witness. He repeatedly asserted, "No credible evidence proves phantom cargo existed. The released documents are of unclear origin and easily forged." However, when Harrington displayed the OSS-stamped contract and ink paper verification report, the chamber buzzed with murmurs. Andrew was invited to speak. He summarized the evidence: the intact B-29 inches the Okinawa cave, the leather bag with the officer list and Indochina map, radar reports showing no sea crash, testimonies from Ueda and Arakaki, and the OSS-signed transport contract. All evidence points to one conclusion: U.S. pilots were used as tools for weapons transport. When the truth risked exposure, they were eliminated. The hearing's climax came when Arthur McMillan was called. The frail old man stepped to the podium, holding the faded paper reading, "Order confirmed. Washington liaison. Secure the site." On live television, he stated, "I heard the officer say the order came from Washington. We were forced to seal the plane. I stayed silent my whole life, but this is the truth." The chamber erupted. Some senators pounded their desks, demanding a full investigation into phantom cargo. But during a recess, tragedy struck. McMillan collapsed in a side room, his heart stopping suddenly. Medical staff rushed in but couldn't revive him. The preliminary medical report noted acute cardiac arrest. The news spread instantly. The live broadcast was interrupted, and the chamber descended into chaos. Some senators exclaimed, "This can't just be a coincidence." Harrington and Andrew were escorted out by security amid the turmoil. The key witness, the only one who dared confirm the order from Washington, had died on the day of the hearing. Capitol Police announced the cause as heart failure due to old age, but the press and public were skeptical. Major outlets ran headlines, "Key phantom cargo witness dies during hearing." Some columnists wrote, "If this is a coincidence, it's too perfectly timed to hide the truth." The Armed Services Committee was forced to pause the hearing, scheduling a resumption after the medical autopsy. But the incident had created a political shockwave. Senator Collins stated, "Even with McMillan's death, his testimony is on record. We won't let the truth be buried again." From this point, the Holloway case was no longer a historical file. It had become a political crisis in Washington, where Congress and the public were forced to confront the military and intelligence agencies directly. The sudden death of engineer Arthur McMillan during the hearing enraged the American public. The press dubbed it the death mid-testimony, and families of missing pilots collectively demanded Congress force the Defense Department to release records. Under immense media pressure, the Armed Services Committee issued an ultimatum. If the Pentagon didn't declassify, the Senate would launch an independent investigation. On November 5, the Defense Department held a press conference in Washington. The spokesperson officially announced the partial declassification of records related to Captain James Holloway's mission. Hundreds of journalists crowded the room, with the event broadcast live nationwide. In the released files, the first notable point: the 1,945 official report of hit by anti-aircraft fire crashed at sea was crossed out. The replacement document confirmed. B-29, serial number 741, commanded by Captain James Holloway, lost signal and was not found at sea. No direct evidence proves it was shot down. This was the first time the U.S. government admitted the crashed at sea narrative was false. The files also released radar data matching prior analyses. The signal vanished abruptly, with no explosion indicators. This validated everything Andrew Harrington and the expert team had presented. Major news outlets ran headlines, "Pentagon admits Holloway casualty report was false." However, the remaining files left the public both shocked and disappointed. The Defense Department declassified only enough to confirm James didn't crash at sea. Details about special cargo and phantom cargo were almost entirely redacted. Pages showed large, blanked-out sections, with only fragments like Logistics Division, Special Mission, and a faint OSS stamp visible. Critically, the identity of who ordered the cave sealing mentioned by Macmillan was absent. A page with a chain of command section had all names erased. The Defense Department spokesperson explained, "Some information must remain classified due to national security concerns." Senators reacted fiercely. Senator Collins told the press, "We've only been given half the truth. They confirm the pilot didn't die at sea, but still hide who ordered the elimination and why." At a simultaneous Tokyo press conference, Andrew and Harrington presented a comparison between the declassified files and the evidence their team collected. They pointed out that redacted sections aligned with the OSS-stamped transport contract. Harrington said, "This proves they know exactly what we're talking about and are deliberately hiding the most sensitive part: phantom cargo." Families of other pilots spoke out. Major Dawson's son, one of the 4 missing pilots, stated on television, "We won't accept half-truths. My father and his crew were betrayed. We need to know who gave the orders and why they were eliminated." In UN discussions, France's representative demanded the U.S. explain the French merchant's involvement in the transport contract. Japan's representative emphasized former officer Yamashiro's testimony, proving no B-29 was shot down that night. All showed the declassified files only confirmed part of the truth while evading accountability. The international expert team's new report stated, the U.S. Defense Department officially admitted the crashed at sea narrative was false. They released radar data matching independent evidence. However, they redacted all information about phantom cargo, OSS, and the chain of command. The truth was only half revealed, with the rest still concealed. American public opinion was divided. Some were satisfied that the government at least admitted the error and acknowledged Holloway didn't die at sea. But many others, especially families of missing pilots, saw it as an insult. "We want the full truth, not redacted pages." Meanwhile, Harrington prepared a new New York Times series, focusing on comparing the declassified files with the leaked OSS documents. He stressed, "Every redacted blank is where we have evidence. They're not denying, they're just hiding." Andrew, in a closed meeting with the expert team, concluded, "Phantom cargo is no longer a tactical secret, it's a political secret, and they'll keep hiding the part about who gave the orders until forced to reveal it." With this event, the Holloway case entered a new phase. From a classified file to a partially declassified truth. James Holloway was vindicated, but justice for him and his crew remained in limbo, with the mastermind's identities still shrouded in darkness. In June 2024, Arlington National Cemetery held an unprecedented ceremony for a pilot reported missing for nearly 80 years. On the lush green lawn, witnessed by hundreds of dignitaries, veterans, and pilot families, Captain James Holloway was officially recognized as a victim of a wartime betrayal conspiracy. The American flag was solemnly presented to his descendants, along with the Medal of Honor once offered as a bribe, now a symbol of his vindication. Attendees fell silent as James's name was etched onto a memorial alongside thousands of comrades. No longer a name on a missing at sea list, he was acknowledged as evidence of pilots who sacrificed but were betrayed by the system they served. U.S. and international media covered the event, calling it a turning point in revisiting World War II history. Concurrently, in Okinawa, the rusted B-29 was removed from the cave after reinforcement and preservation. The massive airframe, serial number 741, was displayed at the Okinawa War Museum, becoming a shocking artifact. A plaque before the frame read, "Captain James Holloway's B-29, evidence of the Phantom cargo operation and a betrayal concealed for nearly 8 decades. Visitors from around the world came to see it, take photos, leave flowers, and write notes of gratitude." In the international expert team's final meeting, the concluding report stated, James Holloway and his crew did not die by Japanese anti-aircraft fire. They were forced to land in Okinawa, then eliminated to conceal a weapons transport operation. The Phantom cargo operation was coordinated by the OSS and military logistics. U.S. government records were altered and hidden for decades, only partially declassified under media pressure. Andrew Holloway spoke at the Arlington Memorial. "My grandfather was turned into a tool for a conspiracy, but today he's been given back the truth. This isn't just justice for one family, but for all who sacrificed and were forgotten." His speech was quoted across major outlets, becoming a symbol of the fight for historical transparency. Harrington, the New York Times reporter, continued the Phantom cargo series with unresolved files. He asserted at least 4 other missions remained classified and demanded Congress keep investigating. His articles sparked a nationwide movement, forcing the government to release more records on missing pilots. Andrew didn't stop. After the memorial, he traveled to Paris, meeting French historians to scour colonial archives for further evidence of the merchant network involved. He also prepared a trip to Vietnam to investigate the ports marked on the Indochina map. Each step was closely monitored, but he vowed to continue, as the truth can't be buried forever. The Holloway case's legacy transcended a personal story. It became a reminder that in war, the enemy isn't only on the opposing front, but can lie within one's own system. The case set a precedent for revisiting unreleasable military files, opening the door for justice for other pilot families. Amid somber military music at Arlington, the ceremony's final words echoed through the loudspeaker. Historical truth cannot be buried forever. This message closed the Holloway file but opened a new path for future investigations where truth would continue to be unearthed from the shadows of the past. The story of Captain James Holloway's B-29 buried in an Okinawa cave, the Special Cargo East Indochina Route File, the OSS Liaison Stamp, the navigation system cuts, testimonies from engineer Ueda and farmer Arakaki, the order confirmed, Washington liaison, secure the site paper, Andrew's staged accident, Harrington's hacked data, the hearing disrupted by Macmillan's death, and the redacted files before Arlington's memorial remind Americans today of 3 specific lessons. First, patriotism doesn't mean blindly accepting the official version. When radar shows no crash at sea, but reports claim otherwise, citizens must use available tools, FOIA, elections, hearings to demand transparency from public institutions. Second, truth requires process. Andrew and Harrington backed up data, documented evidence, protected witnesses. In our digital age, this means security discipline, strong passwords, multi-factor authentication, access logs, independent backups, and respecting chain of custody for evidence, from workplace harassment emails to contract breaches. Third, democracy needs alliances. Veterans, reporters, scholars, and victims' families stood together at the press conference, a model for USSN Alliance. Communities facing local crises, water contamination, budget abuse, election fraud. Practical advice. Support local investigative journalism. Learn source verification. Digitize and preserve family records, as Andrew did. Join veterans groups, PTAs, city councils. Demand sunset clauses for state secrets, and teach children that Arlington's honor is only complete with the responsibility to force truth into the light, because historical truth cannot be buried forever. Thank you for following the tragic yet powerful story of Captain James Holloway and the truth hidden for nearly 8 decades. Subscribe to the channel to not miss the next journeys in uncovering historical secrets, and see you in the next video.